Welcome to this episode of Casted to the King. I'm Joshua Mickle alongside a special guest, Sam Phalen, over at A to Z Sports Nashville. If you could introduce yourself, Sam, just introduce yourself a bit here.
Yeah, Sam Phalen. I'm the Tennessee Titans reporter for A to Z Sports Nashville, covering all things Titans, regular season, offseason content here as we get into draft coverage, general manager coverage, offensive coordinator coverage, basically everything from podcasts to articles, Joshua. So I appreciate you having me on.
All right, glad to have you on. So, right off the top, we're going to be talking nothing but Titans on this podcast, and maybe we'll dive into a little bit of stuff if we have time later. But first and foremost is Tennessee Titans off season. End the season after 7-3, lose 7 straight to close out the year, unfortunately. And the first thing we're just going to talk, just get our own personal perspectives on it, is the 2022 season in a nutshell. So I'll start it off with you, Sam. What do you assess the 2022 season in a nutshell of the good, the bad, the ugly, and what could the season mean going forward?
Yeah, I think the 2022 season is defined by two things for the Titans. The first one being the end of the John Robinson era and the Titans parting ways with John Robinson mid-season. Amy Adams Strunk pulling the trigger on a difficult but correct decision. And it's kind of the end of that era when you look at a culmination of mistakes from J-Rob in the draft, from the Caleb Farley draft pick to the Isaiah Wilson draft pick to Dylan Radins not getting a lot of work at left tackle, and the roster that was kind of in place for 2022 for Mike Vrabel. He just didn't have the horses a lot of the time throughout the season, and you looked at them play and said their offensive line isn't good enough. Some of their DBs are guys that they're pulling off the street to come and play for them, and they don't have the wide receivers of some of these teams that we're now seeing succeed in the NFL playoffs. So I think that is the one defining factor. And then number two would have to be the injuries that have continued to riddle this team. The fact that you had Ryan Tannehill missing time, that you lost, I believe, 7 or 8 of your preseason defensive starters at one point during the season, and very few of your players on the defensive side of the ball even played 50% of their snaps. So it came down to injuries, came down to the roster in place. And as you mentioned, a 7-3 start that just slowly started getting out of hand, and a pretty epic collapse because they ran out of guys and they ran out of steam down the stretch.
Yeah, so I would equate this season in a nutshell for me is at the beginning of last year, I was saying for my prediction of 2022 that it was going to be, I called it a flyer year. And what I meant by that was you're not going to win the Super Bowl, you're not going to get far in the playoffs, and you're going to have a depleted roster compared to 2021. We had Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and whoever we were going to have at tight end. And this was before A.J. Brown got traded, mind you, when I had this mentality. And then it just went on steroids when we traded him away. 2022, what's there to say? 7-3. There are so many one-possession games during that stretch where we could have easily been on the losing end and maybe picking top 5 in this year's draft very easily, but ended up on the winning end at 7-3. And then after beating the Green Bay Packers, the Downing DUI, and then 2 losses later laid on top of that is the John Robinson firing. So if you look at this team's history in the past, like even over 10 years ago, when the Vince Young debacle happened at 6-3, and the Vince Young debacle happened between him and Jeff Fisher, the team never won a single game, I believe, after that, and we finished at 6-10, and ended up drafting Jake Locker the year later. So being a fan of this team and looking at them, especially over the years, is that they have not shown a consistency of whenever controversy pops up, like, say, off the field per se, they don't normally cope with that well. I know it's different rosters and different times and different eras, but as a fan, being a fan of them for over a decade plus, you see that consistency, and that kind of frustrates you as a fan. But the enabling of Todd Downing and this offensive play calling, it just left you pulling your hair to your left bald at this year, because I will point to the first, I think it was the first three offensive play calls in the third quarter of the Jacksonville Jaguars game one this year, where you're going for negative yards, and negative yards on boneheaded triple, like back to back to back plays, and the enabling of Todd Downing, and thankfully he was Vrabel either through his own sense or maybe Amy Adams gave him the shove to the shoulder, like, hey, you got to fire this guy or you're fired, and you can jump with him if you want to keep him here. So we don't know if that was the case this year, but all in all, it was a potential season wasted. But bright side is that going forward, there's these possibilities of general managers and offensive coordinators. Joe Lombardi was just fired today, so maybe add that to the pool of offensive coordinators you go after, or Byron Leftwich from Tampa Bay. The pool for offensive coordinators out there is pretty rich out there. So, and then in terms of general managers, we actually have, it was just reported today that 3 finalists were like round 2 of the GM hirings. Is that it's Cohen, or it's our Cohen, or Ryan? Yeah, Ryan. He's our interim GM. He's in round 2. And then you have Ian Cunningham from the Chicago Bears, Philadelphia Eagles. And then you have the 49ers assistant GM, I believe, or this is the player personnel. I forget which one was which. But honestly, like going forward to 2023, it's going to be an interesting dichotomy between Titans fans of the questions of being asked of, what do you do with Derrick Henry? What do you do with Jeffrey Simmons? What do you do with Taylor Lewan? What do you do with Ryan Tannehill? What do you do with Malik Willis? Do you take the Philadelphia Eagles approach that from Jalen Hurts' last 2 years of, we'll bolster the O-line, we'll bolster your receivers, either you sink or you swim. And if you don't swim, then we'll oust you and we'll go get another quarterback that's going to come in with a great roster around him with receivers and a good O-line. So what would you attribute 2023 in terms of finding an offensive coordinator? Do you think an offensive coordinator should not be hired until the GM is hired so he can have his say in terms of what offensive scheme should be in place for the Titans going forward in 2023 and beyond, possibly?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to the whole Todd Downing, Mike Vrabel situation, like Mike Vrabel very much did not want to fire Todd Downing mid-season, and a big part of that was where the Titans were in the standings. And despite the criticisms that had come Downing's way, some of the off-the-field distractions, just a lot of the controversy over the play calling, the Titans were still sitting in a spot for really right up until the end of the season where they were going to make the playoffs. And from Mike Vrabel's perspective, he understands the effect that changing play callers mid-season can have on your offense, can have on your locker room. It's not really a great message to send. He didn't want to make that move mid-season.
Yeah.
After the season was made, he goes ahead and parts ways with Downing, which everybody I'm sure was on the same page was the right move. Now, you mentioned it, the search for the next offensive coordinator, it all starts with the general manager. The general manager will be hired first. The GM will have his say in who the next offensive coordinator is. And those series of moves that you made, a Jeffrey Simmons extension, David Long, whether you bring him back, Taylor Lewan, Ryan Tannehill, these big looming decisions over the Titans offseason, all of it starts with your GM, who you bring in, and what their vision is for the future of this team. One of the the essentials or the needs that the Titans have for their GM candidates is the ability to have a unified vision with Mike Vrabel for what the future of this team is. You get the sense Vrabel and John Robinson were not always on the same page with some of the personnel moves that they made and some of their outlook on the team. So do the Titans do they go a more modern route, I suppose, with their offensive coordinator position? They've already requested interviews with Eric Bieniemy and Matt Nagy from the Kansas City Chiefs, two play callers that have a history of being pass friendly and liking to throw the ball around a lot. That's not something we've seen the Titans do. So the direction they go at OC, I think will have a lot to do with the direction they go at GM and what their plan is for the roster. the general manager that they hire will come in knowing what the plan is, whether the plan is Ryan Tannehill, whether the plan is a rookie quarterback or a free agent quarterback, whatever direction they go. I think that will impact the offensive coordinator. And whether or not they go run heavy, pass heavy, modern, etc. So yeah, I do think the GM will have a say, the same way that Mike Vrabel will have a say in that decision.
I am very weary about the offensive play caller in terms of the hiring process right now, because if Vrabel, if or whoever's making the decisions, I'm assuming it's Vrabel at this point, is that if we get word that, say, the quarterbacks coach from Atlanta gets the offensive coordinator job, or someone else gets the offensive coordinator job before the general manager is hired, more likely that's not going to happen. But if that does happen, on the 2, 3, 4, 5% chance that may be, if that does happen, good thing or bad thing, that shows that Vrabel does have a power arm in this organization going forward, in terms of you bring in a general manager with essentially nothing that he had a say in outside of picking free agents or players in a draft possibly.
Yeah, I'm not sure how realistic that of an expectation that is, but I do
Yeah.
think Vrabel will have a big say in things going forward. That was kind of the commitment from Amy Adams Strunk to Mike Vrabel when she made the move to fire John Robinson. It was as much of a supporting Mike Vrabel move as it was an indictment on John Robinson when she made that decision. So, yeah, moving forward, Mike Vrabel's going to have a say in personnel. He's going to have a say in essentially all coaching changes like he does as the head coach, but they are going to hire somebody who is in sync with him. Like I mentioned, they just completed their first round of interviews with the GM candidates today. Now they're beginning the second round, and Mike Vrabel is going to be involved in those decisions. So he's going to have his
Yeah.
input as well. And the person that they hire, I would imagine, is right at the same, step in step with him, and they are going to operate together. So I do think it's a positive thing. I think Mike Vrabel is one of the best coaches in the NFL. I think he's one of the smarter coaches in the NFL, and he finds a way to be competitive. So operating under his vision and keeping him in Tennessee is important for the Titans moving forward.
Yeah, so it looks like by the end of the week, we have the Senior Bowl coming up around the corner. So more than likely, we're going to get that GM choice first before anything else happens with offensive coordinator. So, but looking forward this offseason, where do you think the path forward, free agents, draft, quarterback status should be going into 2023? Or do you take a 2-3 year approach of a resetting, reboot sort of year, where 2023 is going to be like your sacrificial lamb year, but you're looking forward to 24, 25 of when you hit the ground running in terms of making a long run?
Yeah, I think they can go really any direction at quarterback, which is really interesting. You can go the draft route, go younger. You can stick with Ryan Tannehill. Of course, I don't know how realistic the Tom Brady rumors are, but those are being floated out there as well, of can they go get a veteran, a Derek Carr, a Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers type of deal. But I think regardless of where they go, the priority to me this offseason needs to be on rebuilding your offensive line. There's a good chance that Ben Jones is looking at retirement. Nate Davis is a free agent, so whether or not he's back in Tennessee is to be determined. There's a possibility you cut Taylor Lewan and cut bait with him, and he ends up somewhere else as well. So you're looking at two offensive line starters right now, and Aaron Brewer and Nicholas Petit-Frere. Dylan Radins has a torn ACL, and there's really not much else available. So I think a new GM coming in, whether it is Tom Brady, God forbid, Ryan Tannehill, or a rookie quarterback that you're taking in the draft, even if it's Malik Willis, you have to support that quarterback with an offensive line to have any sort of success or sustainability. So that is the priority for me through the draft, through free agency. I think they should take one at 11th overall in the first round, and you should attribute a majority of your free agent money to that as well. They're going to cut probably Bud Dupree, probably Robert Woods, get some cap space with some of those moves. And then the question is, how does this new GM attribute that money in the free agent pool to build this roster back up? I think it has to start up front, especially with Derrick Henry in the backfield.
Yeah, this past offseason, we actually had precedent with the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow got sacked a whole slew of times, almost 10 times against us in the divisional round last year, and they just said, "Screw it, we're gonna spend most of our cap on our O line the past off season," and they're looking really good right now. They're not complaining. Maybe that's the route Tennessee goes. For me, last night was the straw. Last night was the straw that broke my back with Tom Brady. I initially, funny enough, on the recent episode that you did with Zach, with scale 1 to 10, Tom Brady come to Tennessee. I was actually with you before you even said your answer. I actually rated it a 4 out of 10 because he would have to take a very big pay cut. But by then, even with that, if you're taking that big pay cut with Tom Brady, that's essentially the money that you saved with Tannehill cutting him or trading him away. So you might as well roll it back with Tannehill. But after that Buccaneers game, I'm at a 0. I don't want that dude needs to retire. He said he was going to play until 45 years old. He's 45. He needs to hang up the cleats, hang up the pads, and go date his his new supermodel friend. Which, if you saw, I did not see it until early this morning. If you saw what his supermodel did for a motivational Instagram reel, it's cringeworthy if you're a football player or just a normal fan. So that was, I can't imagine being Tom Brady's teammate, and then you see that like someone tells your teammate, it's like, hey, you see what his girlfriend's posted?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see that, but no, I agree. Tom Brady, like the whole Tom Brady fit for me, and you mentioned the show that we just did covering the topic, but it comes back to what I just mentioned, the offensive line. Like Tom Brady, while he might be a passer and a good passer from the pocket, although we didn't see that in the playoff game against Dallas last night, but even if he was an established and polished passer from the pocket at his age and his current state, he doesn't have a lot of mobility back there. And you have to find a way to complement your run game with some mobility at quarterback, and you have to find a way to protect your offensive line with a quarterback that can move. And the Titans, who struggled in pass protection all season, will likely struggle in pass protection again in 2023. So bringing Brady in right now just does not make a whole lot of sense to me when you consider your current state of your roster. You can't protect him. You don't have a ton of weapons. You have to play run first football. So I think they need a younger, more athletic, mobile quarterback in. And to your point, like if you're going to do that, you might as well give Tannehill another go at things.
I would actually not give Tannehill another go because he has 2 busted ankles right now. So that dude's almost like, maybe his recovery goes really well, and then he's 2019, 2020 form or 2021 form. We don't know that yet, but normally when a receiver or a quarterback has these ankle injuries, it's almost impossible to come back from. You have outliers like Kevin Durant with his ankle injuries and a whole bunch of other basketball and football players that do have that outlier. But normally it's tough to come back from that, especially from high ankle sprains when normally it's a 4 to 6 week recovery rate. And he came back 2 games later, which I honestly thought was too early. And going forward, Tannehill, if you have to roll with him in 23, I have no issue rolling with him. But if I was, this is why we play hyperbole on here, is that for the O-line, you have to move Brewer to center. He cannot be a left guard. He is undersized for a guard because the matchup disadvantages that he would have against D linemen that are like almost 100 pounds heavier than him sometimes, it's laughable and it's embarrassing because you get that overpowered D line and just maul over Brewer. I mean, he's the perfect size for a center. He should move him over to center, keep Petit Friere at right tackle, or maybe have him battle at left tackle. I thought, if memory serves correctly, he did play left tackle in college a little bit. So have him battle at left tackle if you want to. Like, open up the competition this training camp. With Malik Willis, he was dealt no matter what many Titan fans may think of him, between him or Josh Dobbs, who was better, all of us should agree that this was not the ideal situation that you want to throw a rookie quarterback or any quarterback in this particular offense, O-line, and the receivers around him. You're not going to succeed. Tom Brady's not going to succeed. Not even maybe Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes could succeed in this offense. No one can. And so, which is why I have the belief that whoever is our offensive coordinator needs to have the game plan either for Tannehill or should it be Malik Willis, beef up the O-line, get the receivers in, and if Tannehill can give you a good another year, another 2 years, great. If he can't, and give Malik a shot for at least 23, like the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts for the last 2 years, beefing up their O-line and the receivers, because how many rumors, it's funny, with Heath Ledger, when he was first cast as Joker back in 2005 or 6, everybody loathed and mocked Warner Brothers for casting Heath Ledger as Joker. Now hindsight is, he's the best Joker in all of cinematic history. Everyone forgets the slack that Jalen Hurts got when he was the rookie quarterback and in his second year starting when they gave him the job after they fired Doug Pearson, who's now in Jacksonville. After they fired Doug Pearson, the slack that Jalen Hurts got for his second year, and then after they lost to Tom Brady in the playoffs, you're thinking, there's just a quarterback away. Should they trade away Jalen Hurts? Should they go after Lamar Jackson the season after because they had a bevy of first-round picks they could offload to Baltimore? Or someone else that had a quarterback, or Jimmy Garoppolo that was rumored out there. Now he's the MVP candidate, and now folks don't want to talk about what they said in the past. So going forward, I'm not saying Malik Willis is going to be an MVP candidate next year or 2 years from now, but you don't know that until you give him the opportunity to, because it would not just be criminal. It would be loathsome to not give him the shot, like a proper shot with offensive play calling and good weapons around him and running a style of offense that you can mesh with Eagles of 49ers, which, by the way, which is why I want that 49ers assistant to be the general manager, because whoever said yes to Brock Purdy being drafted, I want that guy to be my general manager. Whoever said no to Brock Purdy, I don't want them to be my general manager. So that's my mentality of why I want the 49ers fellow to be the, let me look up the name.
Ran Carthon.
Ran Carthon, thank you. Ran Carthon. If he's one of the fellows that said yes to Brock Purdy, then I want him as my general manager because he can find players in the draft and he can spot out talent. But again, back to Malik Willis, we don't know until who our offense coordinator is and what the offensive scheme's going to be. Because if it's going to be the same it's been since Mike Mularkey, all the way through Vrabel up to now, if it's going to be that same smash mouth football, we're going to run it with the king, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to pass the ball with these perennial quarterbacks that can pass the football. I can't think of the last time a running football team won the Super Bowl. And no one saved the Baltimore Ravens with Joe Flacco. He was airing out in the playoffs. He aired it out in the playoffs with the Baltimore Ravens. Throwing the football for that Ravens squad won them the Super Bowl. And Denver, when they won with Peyton Manning, when Brock Osweiler was the quarterback at the time, Peyton Manning, he had a bad year passing the ball, and he got benched for half the year for Brock Osweiler. But in the playoffs, he threw the ball. They threw the ball in the playoffs and got to the Super Bowl and didn't need to throw the football as much. Part of that is because the Denver defense was just unbelievable that year, and part of it was Carolina's offense couldn't do anything about it. So there has not been in a long time, I can't think of it, maybe the 22 Buccaneers or the 2000 Ravens, where their identity was running the football and they won a Super Bowl. It's been a long time. And that's a realization that Vrabel and this front office needs to have a realization about. And that raises the question, do you trade Derrick Henry or do you phase him out, which is what I think they should do, is you don't get rid of your number one running back because then you're not going to get as much run the football. And when you do pass the ball, you don't have that threat of play action, RPOs, or whatever you want to do with Derrick Henry. So, what do you think about all of this?
Yeah, I mean, the Derrick Henry thing, no, I don't think you trade Derrick Henry.
I don't think so either.
I think the move, there have been some run identity teams to win or at least go to the Super Bowl and have some success. One of them, namely, being not this year, but the San Francisco 49ers in recent years have found a way to just run the ball as their main identity and find success late. But I think the biggest difference is it's not one bell cow running back like the Titans have with Henry. It's not handing the ball up the middle to the same guy 30 times. It's usually a combination of whether it was Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson or Elijah Mitchell, or then this year, of course, with Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Deebo Samuel, and the way that they use them, it is a number of weapons that are involved in this offense that make them dynamic, that just give them a lot of skill players. So I don't think you trade Derrick Henry, but I do think you need to complement Derrick Henry well with uh, deep threats that can stretch the field. That was the biggest thing A.J. Brown brought to the Titans offense, even when A.J. wasn't the polished, bona fide number one that he is today for Philadelphia. He at least brought the deep threat down the field that helped the 2020 Titans offense be very explosive and be able to push the ball downfield. Play pass was successful. So that would be the vision that I think the Titans need to go with, is if you can find a quarterback that brings some of that athleticism and mobility that I talked about and is maybe a more polished passer than Malik Willis is
Yeah.
currently, and a balance of these two things, and add another deep threat weapon to Traylon Burks and Chigakonkwo. Now all of a sudden you have multiple layers to your offensive scheme. I think everybody saw a a little taste of it. We all got a little taste of it with Josh Dobbs, who's probably an NFL backup, but has some of that skill set at a backup level of good mobility, pretty decisive with the football, knows where it needs to go, can take a hit, but can go pick up a first down with his legs if you need it. That opened up RPOs, it opened up play action pass, it opened up QB rollouts, all of these things that then help Derrick Henry as well. So that's the Titans offense and the Titans identity that I want to see them use while Derrick Henry is still here in Tennessee. The question is, where is the quarterback and where is the offensive line that you need to make that happen?
I would push back a little bit with the Josh Dobbs thing and RPOs. Is that we saw the playbook open up more significantly with Josh Dobbs than Malik Willis, and you saw Kansas City Chiefs first half, perfect example of what you wanted in this offense with the RPO system with Malik Willis and Derrick Henry. We've seen it work. It worked in the first half with the Kansas City Chiefs, and we were at some point leading that game, if I'm not mistaken. We were leading that game in the first half, and we just get away from it in the second half. We were the worst second half football team, the worst fourth quarter offense in the NFL. It's hard to say that Joshua Dobbs, like Malik Willis, couldn't do what Joshua Dobbs could do, because when they did the RPOs with Joshua Dobbs late in the Jacksonville game on the 20-some-odd first down play, I mean, that's back to offensive play calling. I mean, you got to – I mean, that's just – it goes back to offensive play calling, where it just seemed like they were treating Malik Willis like he was a wildcat quarterback with the play calling. Yes, he missed on some throws. I'm not trying to defend him making bad throws. Yes, he makes them. He's a rookie, and he was coming into this year as a project quarterback that you weren't supposed to play him this year.
Yeah,
So
I think that's important though. With the Malik Willis thing, he was more than just a rookie. He was a very, very raw and inexperienced rookie who didn't play under center at all at Liberty. He did not have a lot of looks of an NFL system playing under center and doing those play action passes, which I think hurt him a lot. And the same thing that we heard about Malik in the preseason and in training camp and in daily practices early in the year is the same stuff that we're hearing at the end of the year, where his body's not in time with his brain. There's something that's a tick off. He's not delivering the ball when it needs to go out, when it needs to be there. And so you saw a lot of routes where Mike Vrabel is sitting there watching back the tape saying, there's somebody open here. There's separation here. This play could have worked, but Malik's not pulling the trigger. And I think ultimately that was the thing that helped them, that pushed them towards Joshua Dobbs for those last 2 games of the season, was saying, okay, well, we have Derrick Henry. We have these play action passes. We have this scheme that we think can work. We need a quarterback that can get the ball there on time and do what we need to do. So that is the important thing to remember with Malik Willis, is that this coaching staff does see him in practice every day. And just because he's not out there on the field doesn't mean he's not getting an opportunity to learn or to show what he can do. And if they're not seeing it in practices, they're not going to give him that chance to see it in the game. I think that's where they're at with him right now. That's not to say he can't grow or develop into a good quarterback, but as you said, Joshua, he right now is a project. He does not have the first round pedigree that I think a lot of these quarterbacks have. And I think that's a misnomer with Malik Willis that Titans fans and football fans in general make. There's this idea that because he was one of those top quarterback names in the draft, it was Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder. And there was rumors at one point that Malik Willis was going to go in the first round.
Yeah, top 5, top 10. Yeah.
So because those were the top names, I think everybody kind of views him in the same scope as you would a first round quarterback in any other year. But Malik was a 3rd round pick, and he was a project for a reason. And he fell to the 3rd round for a reason, because there was a lot of things that he has to work through. It wasn't supposed to happen this year. I don't know if they think it can happen next year. It's going to be very, very gradual. And he should not be held to the same standard as a first round quarterback. But I also think the opportunity given to him will not be that of a first round quarterback. I don't think he's entitled to any sort of opportunity.
No, he's of course not. Yeah.
So like that's something that you have to earn. And if he's not doing it well enough in practice, I don't think they are committed to getting him an effort. I don't know if it's guaranteed he's on the roster next season if he doesn't show some improvement in training camp.
So how much would you contribute that to the offensive play calling with Malik Willis's performance?
It's hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to tell without looking at the tape and without being in the meeting room of, what they think they saw with Malik, what Malik is or is not capable of. I did say when Josh Dobbs first got out there in that Dallas game that there was a heavier dosage of those play passes, those designed rollouts that Malik did have success with. But it's important to keep in mind too, so much of that is that goes because the pocket passing can go. And if you can sit back in the pocket and deliver a strike and get a first down, it opens everything else up. So I think some of it could have been play calling of needing to get Malik on the ground. And I was critical of Todd Downing for that when it happened. The one thing Malik Willis brings to the field, raw or not, successful as a thrower or not, knowing the offense or not, is his athleticism.
Yeah.
That's something that you have to use if he's in the game. But I think seeing Joshua Dobbs out there for the last 2 weeks, having the offense in a much more efficient state kind of showed everybody what things were supposed to look like, maybe with Malik Willis, that he might not have been capable of all the way just yet. Again, it wasn't supposed to go this year.
Yeah.
He wasn't supposed to be the guy that was in there at any point this season.
So it's not a knock against you. It's just a knock against the narrative. When I hear that Joshua Dobbs made this offense click better, we still averaged under 20 points a game. We still lost these games. He still turned the ball over in these games. And that's something, whoever the quarterback is going forward, this offensive coordinator needs to show the game plan to the new GM and Mike Vrabel that we need to evolve our offense away from run first to pass first, to where Derrick Henry can still get you 1,300 yards rushing in a year, which by most running back standards, that's a great year. That's a really good year for running backs if you can get over 1,200 yards. Maybe now 1,300 since you got game 17 in there. Maybe that's a new standard. But this offense needs to morph from run first to pass first. And whoever that quarterback is, you got to identify that quickly, whether it be through the trades, the draft, or whoever you have on your roster. But But I honestly do not see Joshua Dobbs. At most, he will be a practice squad player on our team, like Logan Woodside was with us, because there's a reason he bounced around in the league. Joshua Dobbs did. He lost to Mason Rudolph twice for the backup job in Pittsburgh. So people have to remember that, and for those that I've actually been kicked out of like so many Titans groups on Facebook because of my opinions and like cold hard opinions and facts about the team and what I feel about quarterbacks and what I feel about this team. I'm realistic. I'm not wearing blindfolds and wearing like waving pom-poms saying Joshua Dobbs is the diamond in the rough. He's going to lead us to the Super Bowl. He's the volunteer quarterback that's going to lead this Titans team going forward. I'm like, no, he is not. He is not. And I'm not saying, and I'm not playing my flag on the Malik Willis planet that he is. And I'm not saying that Tannehill isn't the guy either. And we got to find that out this offseason based on what I believe is our offensive scheming, and that is going to play a very critical role of who we get in free agency and who we target in the draft. Because if the route is we do evolve our offense this offseason to a pass-first offensive system, there's a good chance that you go O-line and free agency, and then you go pass-heavy in the draft with wide receivers and O-line with your first few picks.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, right? There are so many holes to fill, and if you are looking at turning things over and turning this identity over, what is the quickest and most efficient way to get there? And I look at it as needing to build through the premium positions, those premium positions being quarterback, of course, but first and foremost being your offensive line and being your weapons. You mentioned Brock Purdy earlier. I'm not sure Brock Purdy's all that special of a quarterback, but the 49ers have built themselves a wagon of a system that is
if I could say this, and I've been posing this question to a whole bunch of fans. If you trade spots, if you put Malik Willis in that offense, are they clicking as they are today?
Maybe not quite as well, but I think it still
Are they still in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that's.
Do they still win against the Seahawks?
Maybe not. I don't
know.
That's a tough call. I don't know. Brock Purdy, at the very least, we've seen his ability to hang back there, deliver the ball where it needs to go. I don't know what Malik Willis looks like in that offense. That's kind of but to your point, though, I mean, that offensive line is great. They can run the football with Christian McCaffrey, with Deebo Samuel, with Elijah Mitchell. They have Brandon Ayuk. They have George Kittle. They
got the plethora of weapons. Yeah.
And their defense gets it done on the other side of the ball. So, it is a well-rounded team and a well-oiled machine. It's the reason Jimmy Garoppolo's been good there for the last 5 years or so and at least found a way to win games. And it's a reason that, Brock Purdy's able to step up as Mr. Irrelevant and show you, hey, a guy that can sit there, that can lead, that can be poised in the pocket and just throw the ball where it needs to go, doesn't need to have the most physical traits in the world. They don't have to be amazing on paper as long as they can get the job done. So I don't know if Malik is that or not, but I think that right now Brock Purdy is showing you a good fit for their offense and potentially the recipe, depending on how the rest of these playoffs go, a new recipe to winning in the NFL is building a system around a quarterback and not sticking a quarterback in a weaponless system.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I interrupted you with that Malik Willis question. All honesty, with San Francisco, if they reach the Super Bowl, it's going to be hard for them to get off of Brock Purdy. They're going to trade away Trey Lance.
I think they're sticking with Brock Purdy regardless.
Yeah,
I think Brock Purdy. I think if you lose next week, I still think Brock Purdy's your starter next year. Trey Lance just hasn't proven himself so far. Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent, and you can't deny winning. They have not lost with Brock Purdy as their quarterback so far. So as long as he has buy-in and can prove to win football games, you have to. It's a tough situation, especially if he proves down the stretch not to be the answer. It's actually kind of similar to the Titans and Ryan Tannehill in 2019, but
hypothetical. Would you go after Trey Lance if he was available in the market?
Yeah, no, I absolutely would. I think that You have to consider all options right now, whether that is, kicking the tires on Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. I think, depending on what happens in Green Bay, Jordan Love is somebody that is intriguing to me as a former first round pick with good athleticism. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is I think if you are the Titans, you are in such a unique and flexible position. It's funny. Mike Vrabel mentioned how the team is at a crossroads in their season
And then they
after
start
they
losing.
won
Yeah.
one of their games. And I think they're at a crossroads in the direction they go as an organization right now. Like
Yeah.
the rebuild path is 100% available to you at this point in time. I can also see them completely retooling and trying to revamp the roster and going for it again next year. So you are at this crossroads in terms of your direction. It'll be on the new GM and Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams Strunk to decide which direction they choose to go, and where they go at quarterback will be the biggest domino that falls once they make that choice.
So you mentioned earlier that you think they should go quarterback with the 11th overall pick. Do you see them?
No, I think they should go offensive line with the 11th overall.
Okay. So anyone you have in mind, the Ohio State tackle, or
Yeah,
or whoever's the best ranked tackle out there?
Paris Johnson Jr. would be ideal. I mean, Peter Skoronski is probably the highest rated tackle. I think he's probably a guard and has some of like the similar issues that Aaron Brewer has at guard, at tackle, where he's maybe a little bit undersized to be a tackle in the NFL. And I think he will be a very good guard, but is an interior lineman regardless. So then the question is, do you want to take an interior guy at number 11? Maybe, because you have 3 offensive line spots that are starting spots available to you. But I think tackle is the priority for me. Paris Johnson would be the biggest name so far on the board that I think if he falls back to 11, that feels pretty good right there. I know a lot of people.
What if Taylor Lewan is still on the roster by the draft? Do you still take him?
I think
Because we actually took Taylor Lewan when we still had Michael Ruse at left tackle, so there's that precedent for us.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Lewan, regardless of whether he's on the roster or not on the roster by the draft, I think his status will be already decided. I doubt he's on the roster by the draft unless he gets restructured. But even if you do restructure him and bring him back next year, I still think you have to take one, because you don't know how he's going to hold up. You don't know what your offensive line is going to look like. You don't even know necessarily if Nicholas Petit-Frere is a long-term starter for your team. Mm-hmm. As I believe he was a third-round pick last season.
Before Malik.
So, you know, what is he going to be moving forward? That's still a question mark as well. And they have not hit on these offensive line picks. You need offensive line. That's where it starts. I'm taking one pretty much regardless, unless there is some miracle where a Quentin Johnston falls to number 11 and you have like a wide receiver like that sitting available. Or, I mean, if one of the quarterbacks miraculously falls that far, i.e. Justin Fields in 2021, when he fell to the Bears in the top, like at 10th overall.
They had to trade up. They had to trade up to get Justin Fields.
I believe they were sitting at 12 and then they moved up to 10 to go grab him.
They were actually in the 20s because they had made the playoffs that year against the Saints. With Mitch Trubisky, they had to trade up
that year.
Yeah, they had to trade. So I can.
Yeah, that does sound right. Either way, though, I mean, if he's sitting there at 10 to like the 10 to 12 range, and you're looking and C.J. Stroud is still there, then you have another discussion that you have to have, where maybe you make a move. But I think, barring a unforeseen player falling in the draft, I think offensive line is just the surefire way to go. That's the biggest need in the draft and free agency. It all starts up front for me.
For those that may say Malik Willis won't be on our roster this year, he's going to be on our roster through his rookie contract, even as a backup quarterback, because that's a cheap contract. So they're not going to get rid of him just based on that. So unless a C.J. Stroud or we get a Will Levis or Ian Cunningham, here's the conspiracy theory. Ian Cunningham's coming from Chicago. You hire him as the general manager, you're going to get tons of fan speculation that, we signed him so we can trade up to the number 1 overall pick to get Bryce Young. Like, as bonkers as that would be. And yet another thing to kick, like at the time when we picked Vince Young over, the Texas hero, picking him in Tennessee. I still remember as a kid, there was talks of how badly Houston thought they just messed up their franchise for the next 10 years after that overtime win that Vince Young put on the Houston Texans. But if we go if we go balls to the walls and get Bryce Young, that signals to me that we're not messing around and we're probably gunning it for the next 2 years, most likely 24, and that would probably be Tannehill. Maybe you play him out that last year, and then you hand the reins over to Bryce Young. So, what are the chances you think we get the first? I'm not saying we will get it, but do you think we should? And would you sacrifice another 2 first-round picks for it?
No, and no, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
The Bears are in a pretty unique situation, having their quarterback figured out and sitting at number 1 overall, not needing to take a quarterback with 5 or 6 teams in the top 10 all looking at it. So there's going to be a bidding war, one of them being Indianapolis. And we all know that Indianapolis does not like to lose out, especially to other AFC South teams. And I think it would make Jim Irsay pretty sick if the Titans and Texans were picking quarterbacks ahead of his Colts at 1 and 2 in the draft. So I don't foresee that happening really in any circumstance. Just because of what you said, I think if you are looking at bringing in a rookie quarterback, you are then looking at a rebuild for the Titans. And it doesn't make sense to rebuild while simultaneously trading 3 years of first-round picks to go up and get that QB.
Yeah.
That feels like the penultimate step of a rebuilding process. So no, I mean, I think if you're going that direction and wanting to do something in the draft, you probably do a placeholder like you mentioned, and then try and do it next season or something. Or hope somebody falls to 10 or 11 and take a quarterback there. I have a hard time seeing where the value is that the Titans can trade up 10 spots to go to number 1 without losing significant value in future drafts.
I honestly, with the only way we trade up is in the top 6 or 7 to grab a wide receiver. That's the feasible trade that I could see us possibly doing this year.
The other question, though, is a receiver probably falls to 11, right? I mean, if Quentin Johnston does go in the top 10, there's a potential that Jordan Addison's still there at 11. Jackson Smith and Jigba almost guaranteed will be there at 11 because of his injury situation and missing a majority of this year. So
maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if I can see them trading at any circuit. I feel like 11, it's not ideal, but it is a spot where they have a feasible chance of getting either one of the top offensive linemen or top receivers in the draft, because the top of this draft will be so quarterback and defense heavy between CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, potentially Anthony Richardson sneaking up into the top 10 if that happens. And then you add on, I agree with you, but it's still possible. And then you add on Will Anderson.
Whoever picks Anthony Richardson, the top 10, let alone the first round, 32nd pick. This year, there's not a 32nd pick. Dolphins forfeited their pick this year, actually. So even at pick 31 in this year's first round draft, if you're picking Anthony Richardson, there's questions about Will Levis. Is he Josh Allen or is he Carson Wentz? And then you just have Richardson, who's just bad. He's just that's just my honest opinion. So if Tennessee drafts Richardson, oh my God, if that happens.
I mean, he's another quarterback that continues to see Lamar Jackson and see Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts kind of break this mold for NFL QB, where he's not a polished passer. He has not been a passer in college, but has shown to have game-breaking speed and athleticism. So he's changed games with his legs. The question is, how does that translate to the league? Mm-hmm. Is it Malik Willis and Deshaun Kaiser, or is it Lamar Jackson?
You're getting Malik Willis 2.0 if you for Richardson. That's
the Malik question, Willis. And I think that will continue to be a question moving forward for NFL teams when you see this sort of prototype of quarterback, this athletic run first QB, whether you're getting the Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields or whether you're getting somebody that just won't translate. So
it's going to be an interesting offseason for sure. And all honesty, with what's going forward is, to your point, we are at a crossroads this year. And with this crossroads, we're going to find out quickly with whoever we hire as offensive coordinator, whoever we hire as our general manager.
I have breaking news right here, and
what
I'm gonna have to hop off here because breaking news: the Titans are gonna hire Ran Carthon from the San Francisco 49ers to be their new general manager.
Wow, awesome!
So, there you go.
I'll let you. I will let you go on that, and that's incredible. How about that for a first appearance? So
All right,
definitely
how
have
about
to.
it?
Yeah, how about that? We'll definitely have to have you on next time. So great hearing that. Now I'm livid with joy. So that answers a whole bunch of other questions of where Titans are going to do going forward.